Hello, year eight. All right, we're going to continue with Macbeth today. I hope you're enjoying the story. It's very dramatic, very violent. And just a quick refresher. So, at the end of our last session, we were still at the end of Act One. Remember, there are three acts. And Macbeth had fought bravely in battle, seen the witches, got the predictions that he was going to become Thane of Cawdor and king. Then he found out he was, in fact, Thane of Cawdor, so he started to believe in these predictions that the witches had made to him and Banquo. And remember, they told Banquo that you, Banquo, will not be king, but your children will. And Macbeth would be king, but his sons would not. Okay? And so there's this mystery out there around what that means and how that might happen if it does happen. So Macbeth is excited by this and writes his wife a letter. And when she gets it, she really wants to be queen. And she says, "This is our chance. Evil spirits, make me strong. I am going to make this happen. I'm going to do whatever it takes." And that sounds like she wants to kill the king. Okay, so that's where we were. Now we're going to continue. The questions are in the workbook, the Macbeth workbook, which I've copied here, but you'll also see them in this video. I'll show them to you. So you probably shouldn't even need to open that workbook. Okay, let's dive in. Okay, I'm going to start just by jumping to the workbook. Okay, now we read this last time, but just a quick refresher. This is page 102 in the workbook. Okay, when Macbeth arrives home from battle, he tells his wife that they are going to have a visitor stay with them that evening, the king. Lady Macbeth immediately sees this as an opportunity, a chance for Macbeth to fulfill his destiny, to become who he's meant to be, the king. Okay, in order to do this, she believes he will have to murder the king. She advises him, or she tells him, to look like the innocent flower but be the serpent, the snake underneath it. Okay? So she's telling him what? To be two faced, to look innocent, to look like he's not up to anything, to hide his real intentions, what he wants to do. Okay? And then be dangerous and quick. Okay? So that's Lady Macbeth's advice. That's a summary. We're going to jump in, though, and just have a look at a couple of key scenes here to help you get a flavor for what's happening. Okay, and again, this is a graphic novel version of the play. Now, here is King Duncan arriving at Macbeth's castle. Okay, and this is Lady Macbeth coming to greet him. Look, here comes our honored hostess. And he says some very kind words. Thank you very much for having me, essentially. And look at Lady Macbeth. Okay, speaking of innocent flowers. Okay, now remember, she wants to kill him. Okay, she wants him dead. And yet she gets down on her knees and bows to the king. And she says this: all the trouble, he thanked her for hosting him. He says, "Thanks so much. I apologize for any trouble that you're going to host us." And she says, "All the trouble we take for you, even if it were doubled and then doubled again, is nothing compared to the honors that you have piled upon our family." Okay, so she's saying it's no trouble at all. You've helped us so much. We gladly welcome you as our guests with gratitude for both the honors you've bestowed in the past and the new honors so recently heaped upon the old. So we're so thankful that we can have you as our guests because you have treated us so well in the past. And again, very recently, you've given my husband this new title. Okay, so she's being very thankful. Okay, and he says, "Okay, take me to Macbeth." Now we're going to jump to the next scene. Okay, and I just want you to get the general feeling for what's happening here. Okay, so here's Macbeth in his castle. They're having a feast. Okay, but Macbeth is not in the room. He's off thinking to himself aloud. Okay. And he's conflicted. He does not know what he should do here. Okay. And that's going to be your task. So make sure you're really tuned in here and make some notes if you want. Um, in fact, I'm going to jump with you to the notebook here, the workbook, excuse me. And oops, let me see how I can move this. Apologies for the delay here. Okay, there we go. Here we go. Okay, so this is page 103. Now, did you know in Shakespeare's times, people believed in the what was called the divine, or having to do with God, right of kings. This meant they believed the king was chosen directly by God to rule over their country. Therefore, to kill a king was not only a crime based on the law, but also a very serious sin against God. Okay? So that will help you to understand a little bit how Macbeth would have been thinking about killing the king. On one hand, it would help him get what he wants to become the king, but on the other hand, there's some very serious downsides. Okay, so your first task, task 9 here, and you should be doing this in a notebook, okay? You're going to consider two different approaches to a problem, okay? Put yourself in Macbeth's place for a moment. Should you kill the king? Maybe you have a really easy answer to that question. I hope so. To help you decide, draw up a list of reasons for and against murdering King Duncan. One has been completed for you. Okay. And I'm going to help you with this. Okay. But draw in your notebook this little chart and leave space for more answers like these. Okay. So, one reason for killing the king, for Macbeth to kill the king, is I, Macbeth, could become the king. Okay. A reason against is the king is Macbeth's friend. That's a reason not to do it. Okay. Now, what about up here? Can you see another reason not to kill the king? Okay. If so, write that down. You can pause the video as you do that. Okay. We're going to make a list. Okay. As we go through a couple of parts of this next scene. Okay, I'm going to help you add to this list. And then you'll answer question 2. Which do you think has the stronger arguments for or against? There's no right answer per se. Okay. Um, Morally, I think it's obvious what the right answer is. Okay. Um, but if somehow we can imagine setting morals aside, as Macbeth does, which is the stronger? Okay. Now, we're going to add to that list as we go through the next part. Okay, so Macbeth is there at his castle. The king is feasting with his people in Macbeth's house, okay, his castle. And Macbeth's off thinking to himself. And he thinks, if doing the deed, killing the king, would end this business, all this worrying and planning, then it would be best to do it quickly. If killing him could sweep my future clear like a net, if only this murder could be the be all and end all of this entire affair, then here, in this little island of my mortal life, in other words, at this moment, I would risk my soul in the next world. Okay, so on one hand, he wants to be king so much. And he thinks, if I could only do this now and then it would be done, then I would do it. I would risk my soul. Okay, because I'm willing to take my chances that I'll go to hell, for example, for having done this in order to be king. But, he says, crimes such as these always have punishments in this world. in that our violence simply teaches bloody lessons to others, and then those students return to plague their teachers. Now, he's not really talking about students and teachers in school, okay? He's saying if you kill someone, there's always a punishment for that in this world. If you do violence, that teaches others to do violence back to you. Okay, so those that you've shown violence, they become violent back to you. They return to plague their teachers. Okay, so what's he afraid of? Okay, what is he afraid will happen if he does violence to the king? He says, justice, being fair minded, forces us to drink from our own poisoned cup. So if we do something wrong, fair's fair, we have to receive that wrong in return. Okay, so add that to your chart here. Okay, this is clearly a reason not to kill the king. He's saying, if I kill the king, then what's going to happen to me? Okay, so that's one reason against that Macbeth is thinking. Okay, now let's go on. Okay, now here's another reason. The king trusts me twice over. He really trusts me. First, he trusts me because I'm his kinsman and subject. In other words, he's my king, and I'm sworn to protect him. And because I'm hosting him in my house as well, it's bad form to mistreat somebody when you are hosting them. Okay? So he should be barring the door against the murderer, not wielding the knife himself. He should be protecting the king as the host, okay? Not hurting him himself. So there's another reason, okay? So that's a reason against, okay? Go ahead and write that down. What's the reason? The king trusts him. It's maybe two reasons. And then also, as a host, he should be protecting the king. It's wrong to hurt somebody when you're hosting them, okay? Finally, Duncan has worn his authority so mildly and kept himself so pure that when he dies, his virtues will trumpet like angels against the wickedness of his murder. Now, that's a complicated way to say something pretty simple. Okay, and it's this: Duncan has been a good king. And so when somebody kills him, people are going to be really angry. Okay, people are going to be really angry because he was so good. If he had been a bad king, maybe people would look the other way. They wouldn't worry too much. But Duncan has been a good king, so people will be angry. Okay, and that means trouble for Macbeth. Okay, so there's another reason against. Okay. And he finally says, I have nothing to spur me into careful action. Okay, it's only my ambition to become king, my motivation to be king, that would make me try this out. Okay, and basically he's made up his mind. I'm not going to do it. Okay, but then he talks to his wife. Okay, and he tells her, okay, the king, we can't go on with this plan. The king has just honored me by giving me this new title. And now this is another reason not to kill the king. The king just honored me, and everybody thinks highly of me at the minute. Okay, so he says these glories should be worn now like clothes while they're fresh, not tossed away so soon. So it would be a shame to waste all the good that he's done for himself by fighting well in the battle and getting a new title. He's taking a chance to waste all that. Okay, so that's another reason to list in your chart. Okay, pause if you need to. Now, Lady Macbeth hears all that. Okay, I'm going to jump back here. Okay, you should have a complete chart. Okay, hopefully you have written down all the reasons that we just gave. And we have a lot of reasons in this against column and only one in the for column. Okay, but which do you think is stronger? Now, after he thinks about it, we just saw Macbeth decides he should not kill the king. But Lady Macbeth is not happy when she hears that. Okay, not pleased. So, let me go on to the next page here. And if I can work out how to get us there. Apologies. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to give you this task, okay, but I want you to think about it for a minute. Okay. Macbeth is going to tell his wife, I don't want to kill the king. I think it's a bad idea. Now, you already heard her say, I'm going to do whatever it takes to become the queen and to make my husband king. Okay. And she already said, I think he's a little bit weak, so I'm going to have to push him. Okay. So just like she said, he's feeling a little uncertain. Okay. So what will she say to try to persuade him? If you were Lady Macbeth, how would you try to push Macbeth into becoming king by murdering Duncan? Okay, let's have a look and let's see what she says. Okay, he says, we can't go ahead with the plan. And she's looking at him and she says, what happened to your dream? Was it drunk when it made these plans? And did it go to sleep only to wake up green with sickness and pale in fear at its former boldness? From now on, I'll consider your love to be just as fickle. Now, basically, what she's saying is, you had this clear plan, and now you've changed your mind. How can I trust you as my husband? You going to change your mind about me? Do you not love me anymore? Okay, so that's the first thing she says to try to push him. Okay, questioning his love for her. Now she goes on to say, are you afraid to be the same man in action as you are in your desires? Will you take the crown you want so badly, or will you live as a coward, always saying, I can't, once you say, I want to, just like the poor cat in the old story who wanted fish but dared not to get her paws wet? Okay, now I think it should be pretty clear here. She's saying, are you afraid? Are you going to be a coward? Are you afraid to get your paws wet in order to get the fish? Okay, so she's saying, are you afraid to do it? Okay, she's questioning him. Now, Macbeth just finished fighting bloody battles. Now, we know he's not afraid to kill anyone. Okay, so we know that's not true, but it's an effective argument with Macbeth. Okay, because he believes in being brave and he doesn't want his wife thinking he's not brave. Okay, so sorry. Let's go on to the next page. I pray you stop. I dare do only what is proper for a man to do. He who dares to do more is no man at all. So he knows she's questioning his manhood. Okay. Now she pushes that even farther. She says, if not a man, then what beast made you share this plan with me? When you dared to do it, then you were a man. And if you dared be greater than you are, then you would be so much more a man. Okay, guys, don't worry if this language is a little confusing because we're working through it together. Okay, you only really need the main idea. And she's saying, if you dared to be more than you are, if you dared to be king, then you would be more of a man. Okay, and then she says something really shocking here. Okay, she says basically, you gave your word. Okay, you said you were going to go ahead and do this, become the king, whatever it took. And she says, I've raised a child. Okay, I've fed a child from my body. Okay, but even as it smiled up at me, I would have plucked my nipple from its boneless gums, okay, taken the baby off my body and dashed its brains out. Okay, listen to that. You'll get to know what Lady Macbeth is like now. She says, I would have taken the baby off my body from feeding it and bashed its brains out if I had sworn to do it as you have sworn to do this. So she's basically saying, you better keep your word. She said, I would keep my word no matter what, even if it meant killing my own child. She said, so you should keep your own word. Okay? So now the other way she's trying to push him is saying, you made a promise, you better stick to it. All right? Now, have those evil spirits, are those evil spirits helping her? Maybe. Okay? Because she's really pushing hard for what she wants. Okay? We're going to leave it there with that piece. Okay? We're going to have a look at our next part of the task. Okay. Now, we're going to just read this. Okay? This is imagine there was a newspaper reporter there at this time. Okay. Oops. Just want to make sure I haven't skipped over. Yes. So imagine there was a newspaper reporter there at the castle, and the next morning, everybody wakes up, and here's what the newspaper reporter finds out. Okay. King Duncan brutally murdered as he slept. Okay. So this is what happened in Macbeth. Okay. There's no reporter in the story. This is just an exercise. Imagine. Okay. Oops. King Duncan was brutally murdered as he slept. He was spending the night at Inverness, Macbeth's castle. How did he die? Multiple or more than one stab wound to the chest. So somebody came into the room and stabbed the king, Duncan, in his chest over and over again. Now, who did it? The main suspects are the king's guards. Okay? You should find out their names. Okay? They were found asleep outside the bedroom. So the names are not mentioned here. Don't worry. You don't need to track them down. Okay? They were found asleep outside the bedroom. Their knives were smeared with the king's blood. What was their motivation? Why would they have killed the king? They could have been drunk. A servant said they were drinking all evening. Another possibility? Maybe they were working for the King of Norway. Now, you may have your own ideas about what happened. I hope you do. Macduff, the Thane of Fife, discovered the body, and the reporter's making a note. I should interview him. Why was he there? What did he discover in the king's bedroom? What did he do? A servant said Lady Macbeth fainted when she heard the news. Now, knowing how Lady Macbeth felt about killing the king, okay, do you believe that she really fainted? Macbeth killed the guards in a fit of rage. So Macbeth, who owns the castle, killed both of the guards who everybody now suspects of killing the king. Think about that for a second. Then he said, who can be wise, amazed, temperate, and furious, loyal, and neutral all in a moment? So he's basically saying, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have killed them. Maybe I should have waited and interviewed them to try to find out why they killed the king. But I'm loyal to the king, and I was just so angry. The guards are dead. Will we now ever find out the truth? Okay, the king's sons, Malcolm and Donalbain. These are Duncan's sons. They left the castle right away after they heard that their father was killed. A servant is reported to have heard Malcolm say, where we are, there's daggers in men's smiles. Okay, so they're saying people smile but they are dangerous. That maybe reminds us of Lady Macbeth saying, "Look like the innocent flower, smiling, but be the serpent under it, ready to kill." Okay, I think we know who did this murder. Was it safer for the king's sons to stay or to leave? With Malcolm and Donalbain gone, who shall be the king? That's an important question. Our recent war means a strong king is dead. Okay, Scotland's recent war. Who can do this job? The other thanes, the lords, like Macbeth, are going to meet that very day to elect a new king. Okay, so think about it for a minute. Okay, after this conversation between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, where she's pushing him to follow through and kill the king, that very night, the king gets murdered. Somebody stabs him over and over. Macduff, another lord, happens to walk to see the king in the morning, and he finds two servants asleep with bloody swords in their hands. Now, it's possible they did it, but what's another possibility? Of course, Macbeth killed the king himself and then put these bloody swords in the hands of the servants to make it look like it was them, and then he killed them so that they couldn't tell a different story. Okay? And Macbeth, it turns out, is the one who got them drunk to begin with, so that they slept while he went in to kill the king. Okay? So that's what happened. Don't confuse Macduff with Macbeth. Okay? Macduff is just another lord who discovered that the king was dead. Okay. So I hope that clarifies for you what happened. That's a big event in the story. Macbeth did go ahead and kill the king. Okay? And he did it because Lady Macbeth pushed him into it, even after he decided not to do it. Okay. Now, the king is dead. Long live the king. We're moving on to your last task here, task 12. Okay? So with the king dead, and Malcolm and Donalbain, the king's sons, ran away because they thought it was dangerous to stay there, Macbeth becomes Scotland's new king. Okay, so the other lords met, and they decided that Macbeth, because he was so brave in battle, should be the new king. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth do not live happily ever after. One person has his doubts. Okay, now remember, Banquo was there with Macbeth when the witches told Macbeth that he would be Thane of Cawdor and then he would be king. So now Banquo hears about the killing of the King Duncan in Macbeth's own castle, and he goes, wait a minute, something's not right. And he says out loud, thinking to himself, thou hast it now, you have it now. King, Cawdor, Glamis, all, as the weird women, the witches, promised. So he's saying, oh, now you've got everything that those witches promised. You were Glamis before, you became Cawdor, and now you're king. And Banquo says, and I fear thou or you played most foully for it. Okay? I'm afraid that you did something evil to become king. Okay? Macbeth knows Banquo's suspicions could be dangerous for him. To make sure Banquo does not cause him any problems, Macbeth hires two murderers to kill his friend Banquo and Banquo's son, Fleance. Okay, so Macbeth has killed the king. He didn't want to do it. He knew it was wrong. Then, to cover that up, he had to kill the two servants. He maybe would have killed the king's sons as well, Malcolm and Donalbain, but they got out of there. Now Banquo suspects him, and he's sending people to murder Banquo and Banquo's son to make sure anybody who suspects him is gone. Okay. Now, here are your 4 questions to answer at the end. Okay, this is the last part of your task. Which act is worse, killing the king or killing your best friend? Okay, you might think about this from your own point of view, and then you might imagine how people at that time would have thought about it. Okay, question number 2. Go ahead and pause if you want to answer question 1 first. Question 2. What are your opinions of Macbeth at this stage of the play? What is he like? Okay, what do you think of him? Number 3, has Macbeth's character changed in any way? Okay, think about who he was at the beginning. Okay, fighting these wars for his king. Okay, and now he's killed his king. So, on one hand, he thought it was wrong to kill the king. Okay, but now he's not only killed the king, but he's killing other people to cover it up. Okay, so how has he changed? And now, number 4, choose 3 adjectives you would use to describe Macbeth. So, for example, an adjective would be loyal, trustworthy. Okay, but those clearly don't fit at this point. So, what would you say about Macbeth? Okay, how could you describe him in 3 adjectives? All right, that's everything for now. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you're enjoying the play, and good luck with your work. Let me know how I can help.